the rial against the dollar has crashed massively. And this has trickled through all parts of the economy. So now, instead of just having women demonstrating or students demonstrating, you're having something percolating through the whole of society into factories.
And nearly 500 protesters are now reported to be dead after protests in Iran. The regime there insists the situation is under control. Iran's foreign minister says the nation is ready for negotiations but warns it is fully prepared for war. Donald Trump says the US is strongly considering military options. I can now welcome to the studio Roger Boys, the Times diplomatic editor, who has a really, really interesting piece in the Times now discussing the situation now unfolding, continuing to roll out in Iran, and why this time round there may be a stronger threat to the survival of the regime than we've seen on previous times of crisis. Roger's here. Hello to you, Roger. Good to see you.
Hello. Good to see you.
Do tell us about your piece, which I strongly recommend, where you talk about this time there is a greater threat to the regime, and it has, among other things, roots in economic strains in Iran, which is so significant.
Yes, it's actually a kind of polycrisis. There's always been this underlying unstated crisis about how long the Ayatollah was going to last physically. He's 86, he's ill. But the economy is being handled extremely badly, and the Iranians are extremely alert to this. So it started in the bazaars, electronic goods salesmen and these sort of things. They're dependent on electric things that are smuggled in, sanctions busting, and they come in at a dollar price. And the rial against the dollar has crashed massively. And this has trickled through all parts of the economy. So now, instead of just having women demonstrating or students demonstrating, you're having something percolating through the whole of society into factories and in, there are different figures, but like 160 small towns and big cities across Iran. Sometimes the numbers look smaller than they were in the original Green Revolution, but they're much more spread out, and the result is that the counter forces, the IRGC and so on, are more stretched too. So you're getting a lot of individual massacres. That's why the death figure of demonstrators is so difficult to get. There is no central clearinghouse, if you like. The opposition isn't sophisticated enough to develop that kind of reporting mechanism.
Right. Yeah. What about, Roger, the threats, very, very open threats, repeated threats from Donald Trump to intervene militarily, which I presume many people in Iran know all about, despite the recent interruption of the internet? Will that have an effect in, well, certainly adding more volatility to the situation, as well as maybe giving the regime some argument that people need to rally together against the imperialist Americans?
Yeah, certainly boots on the ground would be dangerous. And a collaboration, as some had mooted, because there was a meeting between Marco Rubio and Benjamin Netanyahu, that there might be some kind of joint special forces, Iranian-Israeli attack, or indeed an aerial attack on Basai barracks. Basai are the paramilitaries that are going around and doing a lot of the damage. So these are both possibilities. I don't think ordinary Iranians will much mourn an attack on a Basai barracks. But my feeling is that the Americans are probably going to rely more heavily on Israelis' capacity to break into computer systems, and they once paralyzed, at least for a while, the Iranian nuclear program by putting in a virus. They can do these kind of things. They've spent a lot of time studying the structure of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So it will be this kind of disruptive thing. But knowing Trump, he'll want one dramatic strike as well, which he can boast about, and which may and which may not rebound on him.
Do you reckon, I mean, I know one can't really know the answer to this question, but do you reckon military action by Donald Trump against Iran, and he's pretty much committed to some sort of pretty strong action, does it have the capacity to bring about the regime change we keep talking about?
Well, not really. I mean, what you can do is by different nudges, including military nudges and cyber nudges, you can accelerate this revolution. So, and you can help people feel less afraid. And that's what Trump's first utterances actually did. He basically said, it's a disgrace what's happening. The regime had better watch its step or something. He said it in his usual bluster. And this has, emboldened lots of people that would not normally have come out. And his popularity, not huge when he bombed the nuclear installations recently, at the end of that 12-day war, is rising. So there is a sense maybe that this will be needed to neutralize the. It's not a matter of wiping out the mullahs. It's about neutralizing the IRGC and these other armed units who are ruthless and who are killing people in the streets, and you have to somehow show them that they're not that they can't act without impunity, that they're going to be punished, and that's what a bombing attack does on a IRGC barracks. But it doesn't fundamentally change the thing, but it does accelerate the transition away from the regime.
Well, Hallo Blake is an Anglo-Iranian human rights activist and a member of the United for Massa campaign. Hallie Blake, good afternoon to you. I imagine this is a very emotional time for you. Before we start, really, can you just remind us that what United for Massa, what it refers to? It's Massa Amini, isn't it?
Correct. We were formed out of the protests of women life freedom back in 2022, and we started translating the news and sharing it on social media. And that's what it stands for. And we started our activity back then.
So we've just heard from Skylar Thompson, who's one of a number of people trying to make sense of what appears to be going on in Iran. What are you hearing?
What I've heard from protesters on the ground has been a description of shower of bullets shot at protesters on Thursday and Friday, as well as Saturday. So what the protesters saw, despite the sea of people on the streets, they saw that they were met with war-grade ammunition. And also what we also heard was machine guns being stationed at squares in the city of Gorgan. That is clearly war against protesters. And also what images we have seen from the ground has been people of all ages. We have seen elderly women in hijabs going out and chanting death to the dictator. We've also seen kids as young as 11 asking people to come out and join the uprising on Thursday and Friday following the call of Reza Pahlavi, which saw millions coming out, and that was a historical day in itself. From the grounds, they actually said the protests were much, much larger than Mahsa Amini protests 3 years ago. So that in itself is making history. And those numbers are just scratching the surface, I believe, those number of deaths, arrests, and what I expect to see next, which will be executions.
Do you have relatives in Iran right now?
No longer direct relatives, second sort of like auntie and uncle so far, but I do have friends who are on the ground, but I've also, I do not contact them because of my activity. I do not want to get them into trouble at all. Therefore, we have created a new channel with people who are not linked, and this is generally done via social media. And this is why social media is such a strong tool during these times that have been switched off via the digital blackout that we are seeing across the country. So that's another digital warfare used against the people to control the information and the narrative by the regime.
If you had a personal hotline to Donald Trump, what would you tell him?
I actually had a message, and I've seen the same message coming through from different protesters. They said people are unarmed and they need help. What would that be? I asked them that question. They said, hit the IRGC bases. These are not my words. These are words of protesters,
right,
who are on the streets witnessing people being killed.
Hallie, just explain, sorry to interrupt you, just explain what that group is, what it represents, what it does.
It's the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. It controls all aspects of Iran's military. It's actually been created to protect the Islamic Revolution rather than Iran itself. And it also controls 80% of the economy. So it controls all aspects of the economy, which part of this protest is or revolution, I may call it, is about.
So this is an organisation, a body that is separate from the army.
Correct. It is separate, but they control all aspects, and they do control the nuclear sites. They are a designated terrorist group in multiple locations, such as US, Canada, Australia recently done it, as well as Bahrain and Saudi.
Though not in Britain.
Not in Britain. We have been campaigning for this for years, but I think we've gone beyond these democratic routes that we have campaigned for year after year.
So the IRGC, fundamentally, its job is to keep the theocratic government in place, as simple as that.
Correct.
So if they were targeted directly, you're saying that would satisfy the people that you're in contact with in Iran?
That's what they are asking for, because they're unarmed, and that at some point either we must arm the people, which will cause civil war, or that you get this targeted and get the job done. People have been really clear on their demands. Their chants have been strong, bold, from across the country, asking for a transition through Reza Pahlavi and getting to the ballot boxes as per his Iran Prosperity Project that he published. I think that's been very clear across all of Iran, from all locations, people chanting those Javid Shah, which is long live the king, and this is the last battle, Pahlavi will return. Right. I think if you're not able to do it this time, it will be more bloodied. And I think it's worth mentioning that analysts had previously said that based on in the Islamic Republic's crackdowns, 2 million people could die in order to topple this regime. And to be fair, I think we want to protect the bloodshed, because resources are actually the people. They're not the resources of the country. We can build all those resources. We can deal with that, but it's the human lives that are worth everything.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you saying that you and other people like you would support the return of the last Shah's son, as a kind of interim head of state whilst you sorted out the future?
Correct. He stepped up as a transitional leader with widespread support from right to left to get us to ballot boxes, and then the Iranian people decide. That's been in his Iran Prosperity Project, which he actually allowed 45 days for the population to go back to him with suggestions. So this actually displays democracy from those very basic practices we have come to see this far.
Hallie, I mean, so many people in this country will be absolutely with the incredibly brave protesters in Iran right now, and they are so brave. We need to honour that. But they'll be wondering about this idea of the return of the royal family, when the last Shah, who was ousted in 1979, well, he was a despot, wasn't he?
No, I have to disagree. I had to debunk that very propaganda that's been embedded by the Islamic Republic. He was building Iran. In fact, all the infrastructure that you see today are built by him. He was reforming his government at the time, and he wasn't perfect, but he was actually working towards everything. And people are re-educating themselves, especially more intensely in the past 3 years, and that's why they do not trust anyone else to take us through to the transitional governments of whatever happens next. But don't forget, we were a 2,500-year-old country, one of the oldest, and we've always had kings and queens. I mean, if that is the worst case of someone so democratic becoming a symbol, I'm not against it. I'm not historically a monarchy supporter per se, but I do not see, just like everyone else who's been chanting on the streets, there is no way out, there's no one coming to save us, and we believe in him to get us to ballot boxes and let the Iranians decide.
And the intervention of the global superpower, Donald Trump, in individual, that's the individual manifestation of the global superpower. You're all right with that, are you?
I think if it does good in this case, there is no other way. Then this is really difficult. This is really difficult to say. Hit the bases or whatever. It's calling war to your country, but these are not my words. There is the word of the protesters asking for help because they're unarmed. Otherwise, how do you think you can help them? The diplomatic routes hasn't worked. In fact, our government hasn't had the spine to take those steps to really crack down on the IRGC, on the Islamic Republic. They've negotiated with people who do not hold the same values. You do not hold the same values, and you cannot negotiate with a serial murderer that sees any kind of protests as a warrant to open machine gun fires at. So I think this is not a government we can negotiate with, and we ask the West to not. Firstly, don't negotiate. Secondly, engage with Reza Pahlavi for a transition. And third, support the Iranians inside. And those are really our demands.
Okay. I mean, are you concerned that, on the whole, America doesn't intervene unless there's something in it for them? With Venezuela, President Maduro has been taken out, but replaced by his deputy, who's pretty much cut from the same cloth. And I don't think the people of Venezuela feel all that much happier. Isn't there a chance that the Trump administration could do a deal with some version or some part of the current Iranian regime?
Well, Venezuela was a mid-revolution. It didn't have millions coming out chanting someone's name. I think it would have been a different circumstance should that be the case. And I think Iranians getting to this point, they will not accept anything less. We have seen attempts by the regime to really change layers, reshape, reform, or they call it that. But ultimately it's been the same. So I do not think the Iranians will accept anything less, even if Trump comes forward. I mean, don't forget, Iranians are highly educated. They have a really high IQ. It's top 4 in the world, and they also are secular and they're seeking democracy. So they will not settle for anything less than what they want and deserve.
Really interesting to talk to you. Thank you very much. That's Hallie Blake, who's an Anglo-Iranian human rights activist and a member of the United for Massa campaign.